morning, good afternoon, whenever you're seeing this. We are about to have our sixth session of Speech Class Yes. And this is going to be our penultimate session. I want you to do several things. Let's jump into my little presentation for you. All right. In this session, we are going to focus. We're going to try to bring it all together. Okay, we're going to try to bring all the tips I've given you in the past. We're going to try to turn it all into a nice, polished presentation. All right. Here is what you're going to do. You're going to prepare a 2-minute presentation speech, preferably a story or an anecdote, just like the first session we did. But I want you to focus on having a lesson or a moral to your story. So I get that it's this week and you may not have a lot of time to prepare for that, and that is okay. Just prepare a 2-minute speech as a story, something that's happened in your life, and then a lesson you've learned from that story. Maybe it's fishing, and you learned a lesson from fishing. You learned that sometimes you got to try and try again, or whatever. Maybe it was getting a new dog, and you learned that animals just need love, and maybe people are the same way. Maybe you broke a bone, and you learned just how important it is to have people around you that care about you. I don't know. There should be a moral, some kind of a lesson that you're prepared to share. Now that lesson can be explicitly said at the end of your speech, or you can leave it subtle where people can try to figure out what the moral is. I lean towards going ahead and saying what the moral is, but I'll leave that up to you. Okay, we're going to film your speech like we filmed all of them, but then during lunch, so after we do our speech class, everyone does their speech, then during lunch, I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes of individual time. So my plan is to just do that alphabetically, and then each person can come and sit with me as we're eating, and I'll give you specific feedback on your speech, because I'm going to be taking notes during your speeches. So that's how I plan to give you feedback this week. Then between now and our next session, you are going to watch your recorded speech, the speech you just gave. And then you're going to practice it. You're going to repeat it. You're going to take the feedback that I've given you. You're going to take the feedback you get from other folks if you ask them. And you're going to take feedback that you've seen throughout the class. And then you're going to give the same speech, but a new and improved version. Okay? I don't know what kind of feedback I'm going to give you, but I'm hoping that it'll be relevant to you. So you'll do our next session, which will be our final session. You will do this same presentation, okay? Except it'll be improved because you will have taken in the feedback. You will have practiced it in the mirror. You will have filmed yourself between sessions and watched it and seen if you're still doing those tics, things like that, okay? Now, I want you to remember that the first session we did, we talked about some basic presence, eye contact, clear articulation. Don't mumble, right? Don't walk onto the stage like that. Some body language. Just kind of engage the audience. Be interesting. Make eye contact. These kind of basic presence things, okay? Then you also want to focus on voice. So varying your pitch, the speed with which you're talking, also your volume. You want to get really loud and then really quiet if it makes sense for your story. So say your story is you were riding a bike and you fell off and you yell out like, ah, and you broke your leg. When you get to the broken leg part, you might yell. You might say, ah, it hurts. You obviously wouldn't whisper that. You'd yell that. So that'd be a variation in volume. Okay? All right. Structure. We also did a session on structure, if you'll remember. And in this case, since it is a story, it's not so much that you have points you're building. You're not trying to persuade us of something necessarily. Just make sure that you have a clear beginning, middle, and end. You can even go back to that handout I gave you guys on the first session on how to tell a story. You can use that if you want for your structure. You can structure it however you want. Just make sure that the audience knows you've begun, you know you're getting to the point, and then there's a nice, in this case, since it's a story, there's a nice resolution. And you might end it with, and the lesson I learned was fill in the blank. Or the lesson we can all learn from this story is fill in the blank. Again, I'll leave it up to you. You don't have to finish your speech with the lesson I learned is, or the lesson we can all learn is, but I'm recommending going ahead and doing that, because that way my feedback, I can give you feedback on the lesson, and if there's a suggestion I might make and how you might change that, or how you might incorporate things into your speech to help drive that lesson home. Okay? Structure. Okay, visual aid. I want you to send an image in order for that to be up on the slide for you. Focus on that image being supportive, not distracting. I've talked about that ad nauseum, so you should know the point when I'm saying that. Also, think about the shape of your image. Make sure it's filling up the entire TV screen horizontally. And then audience interaction. Because this is not like you're not going to have like a question and answer session in your speech, I do want you to build into your presentation at least one time where you do something that will connect with the audience. If you remember, that audience interaction was more than just take questions. It was also making sure that you're connecting with the audience, you're engaging, making sure they're following your story. An example of what that might look like, that might be something like, once upon a time, my family and I were in the car, we were driving, and everyone was starving, and we had to decide which place to eat, Chick-fil-A or Zaxby's. How many here like Chick-fil-A better than Zaxby's? And you might have everybody raise their hands. How many like Zaxby's better than Chick-fil-A? And you see what I'm saying? That's a way you could incorporate that into your story. And I might take that and say, well, that's interesting. Half of you, or over half of you, like Zaxby's more than Chick-fil-A. That wasn't the case with our family. We chose Chick-fil-A, and then we're off to the races with our story. So that's an example of something you could do to engage. It doesn't have to be like a survey of the audience, but just think about something that you can do in the middle of your presentation. Maybe it's even asking a question that you don't actually expect to get an answer. I'm blanking on what that's called. Rhetorical. You could ask a rhetorical question. So now I'm blanking on an example of what that might be. You know how everybody says food tastes like chicken? Like, I don't actually want you to answer that question, but it is a question, and you're asking it to the audience. It makes them stop for a second and think, and then you move on. You're not asking them to say, no, I don't know how they say that, or yes, I've heard people say that. Like, you don't want people to say that, but you're connecting with the audience in that engagement. All right, these are essentially the 5 lessons we've focused on in the speech class, yes, up to this point. Presence, voice, structure, visual aids and how to use them, and then audience interaction. So what you're going to do is you're going to prepare a 2-minute speech, a story with a lesson or a moral. We're going to film it. I'm going to give you individual feedback during lunch. It'll be a couple minutes. It won't be super involved. You're then going to take those notes from our feedback sesh, and you're going to watch your recorded speech and see the thing that I was talking about, the thing that I'm suggesting. You're going to watch it and you say, ooh, he's right. Or you can say, I don't think he's right. That's fine. But then you're going to practice. You're going to repeat the speech. You're going to film yourself. You're going to look at your own film of the speech. You're going to make some adjustments. Did people laugh? Did they not laugh? Were they supposed to laugh? Are they supposed to cry? And then you're going to improve your speech. So our final session will be you giving this speech again, but a better version of it. Okay? All right. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to call or text. I'm happy to answer those questions prior to our session this Wednesday. All right. Talk to you soon.